Is there an increase in the number of cases of contamination? Is it because of ethanol? And what is the way ahead?
In the end, it all boils down to cost. So, who bears the cost of it in this whole thing? So clearly, it's a motorist who's bearing the cost.
The challenge is the fear, doubt, unsure information is all leading to a complex thing. I think one of the challenges is all the stakeholders have to speak in one voice. And they have to be very upfront and clear what it is.
Hello and welcome. You're watching me, Sanket Upadhyay, on TheFederal. The show is called AI with Sanket. This is the AI of news because news in India today requires not artificial but analytical intelligence. So far, the debate was about ethanol blending. Is it good for your car, not good for your car? One could understand that there were arguments for and against. But the debate or the discussion now is on fuel contamination. And it'll be very hard for you to get anyone who will list out the benefits of contamination. There are no benefits. Even if your car is 100% ethanol compliant, if the fuel is contaminated in some form, or if it has chlorine or water, the car engine will stall. So in a situation like this, what is the SIAM, the Association of Automobile Manufacturers, saying? Is there an increase in the number of cases of contamination? Is it because of ethanol? And what is the way ahead? This discussion is going to be with automobile experts and not content creators. There is a whale of a difference. To understand where should you stand and what should you do in a situation like this? What is the government saying? What are the automobile experts saying? I have with me two extremely eminent panelists. Hormazd Sorabjee, editor of Autocar India. Thank you very much, Hormazd, for giving us time. You
Thank
need
you.
no introduction. The world knows you. India knows you
Thank
really
you.
well. So I can very safely say, and so will the people of this country, that you know a thing or two about automobiles. So thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Sanket.
Thank you for joining us. We have Mr. Arun Malhotra, also former MD of Nissan India and auto industry expert. Thank you very much, Mr. Arun, for joining us.
Thank you, Sanket.
Thank you, sir. Hormazd, I want to begin with you. Let's just keep the ethanol debate out of the picture. The latest controversy is around a letter reportedly written by the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, which is called SIAM, SIAM, then a clarification from the government, and then a retraction from SIAM, where they say that, we'll work with the government. And at the core of this entire discussion is contamination in fuel in monsoon season and a dramatic rise in the number of vehicles which have received contaminated fuel. Now, this is being the ingress of water and chlorine is happening because of the addition of ethanol. As an expert, I want to know, where do you stand on this issue?
Well, look, contamination has been happening in India for decades. I mean, I've had issues when I used to drive a Fiat as a kid, getting stuck because a lot of junk in my carburetor, having to clean out the line at that time. So we've lived with contamination. But just to set the context, to be honest, a lot of work has been done by the OMCs over the last few decades. Earlier you used to have contamination with naphtha for petrol and kerosene for diesel. That was really bad. But really, they've got a lot of tech now which does checks. But still, things do slip through. So whilst I have to say that, the OMCs have done, the oil marketing companies have done a lot to kind of, reduce contamination. You do have cases where it does slip through, and then obviously that does cause issues. Now, what's happened also with ethanol, just by very nature, what it is, it kind of, is a little bit more susceptible to certain type of contamination, largely water contamination, because very hygroscopic and it attracts water, quite easily. Now, the thing about water in India, especially groundwater, is it's generally got chlorine content in it, and there's, to be honest, even chlorine in other things like the ethanol refining process. Chlorine is, in the process is a cleansing agent. You see chlorine in your pools as well. It really is something which we always use. So it's quite prevalent. So the idea is to keep the chlorine levels down because chlorine becomes chlorides in the engine, and that is very acidic and very, very corrosive and can damage your engine. But again, that is irrespective of what engine you have. You can have E10, E20, E30, E100. If the chlorine levels go beyond a certain limit, whatever compatibility of your fuel has, you're going to have a problem. So really the broad issue is, there is contamination. How much contamination? Obviously now, I think there have been a few studies. So I think the issue really is that, to just put it simply, I think tighter quality checks need to be done, which I think everyone is quite cognizant of, especially the oil companies. I know some fuel pump owners, and they've also said that the checks are being done a lot more rapidly. So clearly, this issue is now known to a lot of the oil companies. But as I said, things slip through. I have some data. I don't know how correct it is, but whether it's unofficial. Out of 92,000 pumps checked, about 100, there was contamination in. Now, this was told to me off the record, so I can't confirm it as official. But that gives you some idea that it's a small percentage. But honestly, if you take each pump having 4,000 liters into 100, it can be quite a bit. So it can cause issues. But as I said, contamination has been there in the past. We've shrugged it off as a way of life in India. And the irony is actually a lot has been done to reduce that contamination and adulteration. We were really rampant in decades gone by. But now with the whole ethanol topic being so prickly, clearly, I think, and the fact that ethanol is hygroscopic, it kind of, attracts water. Water has chlorine, and that kind of, may give a sudden spike in engine issues purely because of this. I think that's what the SIAM report said. They've withdrawn that. Now, when they do these sort of things, again, I think it's quite silly because it causes more suspicion of maybe an issue which wasn't such a big issue, but then it becomes a big issue because they're being, kind of cagey about it. So I just think it's been handled badly. I'm one who feels that long term, I think the issues can be sorted out. I don't think it's a problem for, let's say, going forward. And yeah, so I think, again, specifically on contamination, I think it's something that really is something that needs to be tackled even more strongly to kind of reduce whatever, let's say the few pumps that have kind of, shown some sort of water ingress or contamination in their tanks.
Mr. Arun Malhotra, as an auto industry expert, the former MD of Nissan India, do you think that it will help the end user, the consumer, a bit more if the auto industry remained honest? I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. In December 2020, in a Niti Aayog report, the very same automobile manufacturers, SIAM, said that you must continue E10 because otherwise there'll be a problem in the old cars. And then later we see the automobile manufacturers sitting with the government is saying the E20 is absolutely fine, no issues. Then later, now you see a letter written by SIAM on the contamination and how it is affecting the engine, and then a retraction. So do you feel that the automakers, along with the government of the day, is not being forthright about the possible problems? And at a time when you should be focusing more on clarity, one gets a sense that there is a greater cover-up. Less clarity, more cover-up. Mr. Arun Malhotra.
So, Hormazd explained the entire concept of how this contamination can happen. I think the challenge, if you ask me, really has been the information has been flowing in bits and pieces. First was on the fuel efficiency, then it was on these gaskets and liners, and now on the contamination. I think one of the challenges which was there with 100,000 pumps there, and you have 100,000 storage tanks, and about 50-60% are more than 10 years old. So whether they have the right sensors, whether they have the right technology, nobody knows. Till a problem crops up, the solution comes in, and now there have been issues where when the companies where they said major issues are coming because of E20, when the fuel pump or different fuel station was taken, the problem got solved. I think the challenge to me is more than the SIAM is that the various stakeholders, the oil companies, the petrol pump owners, the government, this sort of alignment which has to be there, the communication has not been done. And now, whenever a problem comes in, everybody's pointing fingers at others or raising a doubt. And once a doubt is raised, it goes, flares up in the media. E20 as a fuel, there is nothing wrong in it. So the vehicles which we already have, even before E20, were E10 compliant. And when we say E10 compliant, companies generally design it for a slightly higher level. So the question at the really moment is that all the different stakeholders who are part of the ecosystem, whether it's the refineries, whether oil companies, whether SIAM, or whether it is dealers who are part of the dealer auto ecosystem, need to sit down, and there has to be one common approach. Today we are getting information bits and pieces, and any information which is bits and pieces doesn't match it, it creates a further negative spiral. It's like a vicious cycle. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, Hormazd, this entire debate unfortunately revolves around, not unfortunately, I mean, technically, yes, there is government, there are technicalities. For experts who understand all of this, I understand that you will have to seek more nuance. But today's discussion that I'm having with you is for a person who is driving his car into a gas station or a petrol pump and getting fuel filled. And that is where the problem is right now. There is doubt in the minds of people right now, and there are very many cases that are being reported. You go to any workshop and you will find, particularly in the monsoon months, that ethanol will create a certain amount of problem. The hardware at many of these petrol stations is not updated. The tanks are old, the trucks are old. So do you feel that these are the things that need to be addressed before you go for like a course altering policy shift, rather than defending what really cannot be defended?
No, absolutely. I think, in fact, contamination in a way has given E20 a bad name because it's not E20 per se which is the problem. It's the contamination of it which is the problem. And of course, as I said earlier, E20 is more susceptible to contamination than E10 just by its hygroscopic nature. So I think, just sorting this problem out, I think is job number one. It has to be done. And I think in a way it's a good thing because frankly, you don't want contamination at all. I mean, you can take it as a way to really kind of give you that fuel quality, which you don't need to think twice about. So clearly, I think obviously motorists are worried. I mean, the advice to give to them is fill at a trusted pump, pump you've been using for, regular wise. But, when you're on the highway, you really don't know. So that can be a bit of a hit and miss. So it's a bit worrying over there because, as I said, and, this affects... it's not a question of whether your car is E10 or E20 compliant. It can affect all cars, as it has in the past. We know it's been a problem. And so I think this is job number one because otherwise, I think people are just, the narrative is going into a different direction that, it's making E20 to be the problem, which really it isn't. It's, the contamination of E20, which is the issue. And E20 per se, as Arun said, I think, having, let's say, a strategy, to kind of secure your energy, for energy security is not a bad one. Obviously, the economics are a different debate altogether. But, and I think there are, in a way, a lot of benefits of E20. I'm one for the fact that it is less on CO2. And I think, that's what surprised me. Today's youth are not thinking of their future 20, 30 years later when the earth is going to just boil over. I may not be around. But, I think CO2 today, people need to understand is public enemy number one. There's just no two ways about it. We've got to get that carbon out of the air. It's number one for global warming. We are living it. El Nino, you've seen what's happening, wildfires in Europe. It's real. It's happening, but no one seems to care about that. So that's a separate debate altogether. But my point is, I think E20, we can manage it. Yes, it was shoved down motorists' throat a bit too fast. But there have been buffers, in some of the cars, the E10 cars. So you just about managed. What definitely should not happen, there should not be a base fuel that goes beyond E20. There was talk of E25. I just hope that does not happen because that can really cause serious issues with the older cars. And I think, again, I think the whole problem is that out of all the stakeholders, it's the motorists which has really, got the short end of the stick.
Mr. Arun Malhotra, you see, from a motorist point of view, I buy a brand new car, E85 compliant, the very few cars that are available, and then there is contaminated fuel, and then I go to the workshop, and then I'm told our car was meant for ethanol and petrol, not for water. So this is not covered in your warranty. That is the debate which I want to address at this moment. And in this peculiar situation, you see, it's very normal for people to be frustrated and irritated. So
So,
how do you deal with this?
so Sanket, the challenge is the fear, doubt, unsure information is all leading to a complex thing. I think one of the challenges is all the stakeholders have to speak in one voice, and they have to be very upfront and clear what it is. This information flows in partially and then is withdrawn back. That's causing a major problem. Now, if you knew that it's known to everybody that it is more hygroscopic, it means that basically anything which will flow in or inadvertently or advertently and will have some chlorine will have an impact. When you're rolling it out at 4 years in advance to 100,000 pumps, you needed to do a lot of tests and a lot of things. And the announcement came in one go. So I think as Hormazd said, there's nothing wrong in the fuel. E20 has many, many benefits. The problem is something part of the ecosystem which is not addressed together is causing this issue. So that I think still there is time to cover it up and together and work on it. Otherwise, there will be always a new issue coming up. Dispensing stations, it might come into even in terms of storage and even distribution, which is coming across. So then we'll be each blaming the other. So there has to be one unified voice, which I'm not seeing at this point of time. And one unified voice and advice and some taking difficult questions upfront. You have to take these difficult questions upfront. Some are maybe biased, some may be orchestrated, but it is better to take them upfront and answer them. Once you do it, a lot of nerves will cool down. At this moment, it's not being very upfront, that's the problem.
I'll tell you, Hormazd, the government and automobile manufacturers are speaking in one voice. But unfortunately, it is the voice that the government would like to hear. And that is what explains the retraction from SIAM and its greater alignment to what the government wants to hear. Now, my point is, why is the motorist, why is the auto owner, the car owner, the last in terms of priority? I don't want a government narrative. I want something which makes my life easy. And if this has been, since we've seen an advancement of the ethanol dates, and if that is causing an old infrastructure causing this problem, then sorry to say, people are collateral right now. Their cars are collateral damage.
Yeah. So I think Sanket, in the end, it all boils down to cost. So, who bears the cost of it in this whole thing? So clearly, it's a motorist who's bearing the cost. Now, how do you alleviate the cost of the motorist? Someone else would have to bear the cost. I mean, my thing is let's say there are a couple of things over here. One is the main is a fuel efficiency drop. To compensate for that, the logical thing would be to drop the price of the fuel. They've dropped it for E85 by 20 rupees. So, they could have by proportionately dropped it even for E20 from E10. But there's a cost to that. So now, either the OMC pays the cost or the consumer pays the cost. So someone has to pay a cost. And clearly, this cost is being borne by the consumer rather than, the OMC or the other stakeholders over there, oil marketing companies. So that's point number one. I think at least to alleviate the fuel efficiency loss, some sort of compensation for cost reduction. Now, I've seen the government report saying that if it wasn't for the war, the price would have been 125 per liter and all this. So again, these are all debatable, and to be honest, I really don't know how the mechanics of pricing works, when the oil barrel goes up and down or whatever. But so that's one thing. But, I think there are, I don't know why the government is being so, saying that there is absolutely nothing wrong with ethanol. There are a few issues, but they are not major issues. Just be honest about it. I think you just need to just say that this is it. I mean, the way I look at it is when we went from BS4 to BS6, customer paid a huge penalty. Cars became much more expensive. Over there again, fuel efficiency went down. So clearly, no one made a hue and cry of it at that point. And a lot of diesel went out of the market. The choice completely disappeared because a lot of engines couldn't be upgraded. It wasn't a good time. But I see, but that's what it was. I mean, when you have a legislation change, there is a price to pay by someone at some point. So I think they just have to be a lot more honest about it. As I said, these issues are not something that is absolutely catastrophic. They can be controlled. And two things I want to point out: what the government really should do. One is they should define chlorine limits. In the fuel, there is no real BIS limit right now. They should do that. I've heard some of them are, sometimes chlorine levels are as high as 300 ppm, which is quite crazy. They say normally under 10 should be what it is. And, again, I think what should be done again is, as I said, just absolute quality checks on the pumps over here. So I think you just need to have standards. You need to be more transparent in what you're doing. And honestly, I think it's something that can be fixed. Of course, everyone's got into a first time. We've rushed into it. And paid the price for that, just rushing into E20. We pulled the program forward by 5 years. So again, as Arun said, E20 is not bad. And as I've said, from a long-term perspective, and let's say even environment perspective, it has its advantages. It's just the way the whole thing has been handled. It could have been handled much better.
One thing I just wanted to add,
Yes,
if
sir.
from a motorist point of view, if you had some simple, transparent tests available at every fuel pump, that in a simple way I can check the chloride level, I can check the hygroscopic level. It will inspire confidence. But anything being said at one level is not inspiring confidence. So you need simple tests that every pump has something visible, that this is the way you can check your ethanol E20 fuel. And this will show if it has any chloride level higher or it has any hygroscopic more water level, it is shown. Because I think that transparency is important. Any claims or any statements made by government will have or will not have an impact. That is the way.
Arun sir, see, Mr. Arun Malhotra, the problem is, you see, there is a report in the Hindu on this, and they spoke to the Petrol Dealers Association. These are petrol stations not directly owned by oil marketing companies, which are called COCO pumps. These are
COCO, yeah.
pumps with dealers,
COCO.
and yeah,
Ah.
there are like 90,000 of them, right? So a majority of the petrol pumps are with the dealers. And many
Yeah.
of these dealers say that the cost of constantly cleaning the tanks and constantly checking is a huge cost. Number one, you have introduced this variable on us called ethanol. Number two, there is water ingress in it. And number three, you want us to test it 3 times, which will be a cost center. Who pays for that? So this is
Frankly,
also a
these
practical
questions.
problem.
Yeah.
So
Frankly, these. Yeah. So Hormazd, yeah. Please continue.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'll be honest on the testing. What they do is they put a probe, do it to the bottom of the tank. I mean, it turns a certain color. There's a lot of water on it. It's pretty straightforward test. They do it 3 times a day. There's really no cost to that. To be honest, checking density and all. There's no real cost to that.
Yeah. So I think basically what Hormazd was saying, there is no real cost to it. It is the will more. If something can be done by the pumps themselves, if suppose anybody has the right to take a 50 ml of fuel and test it out in a very simple test. It helps a lot. Because today's question is inspiring confidence. There'll be a cost involved now because we haven't thought of it before. But this is something to be done very well. The other question I want to say is, why are all the issues coming in? If you look at the issues are coming in passenger vehicles, the population of two-wheelers versus passenger vehicles petrol is 9:1 on the road, old vehicles. But you see the number of cases, I was talking to people in two-wheeler companies, they are lower. So probably the social media, the entire, they're more active on this thing and there is a bigger voice they have. The problem is even being blown up than what the reality is. And once the psychosis
No,
comes,
but
it
then,
flows
Mr.
everywhere.
Arun Malhotra, one moment. I'm just playing devil's advocate. No one in their right mind will pour contaminated water in their car just because they want
Absolutely.
to put the oil
Yeah.
marketing companies or make them
No,
appear
absolutely.
bad. Nobody will do it.
No, that is not the case. The point is, people have heard this
After all,
hearsay.
cars are very expensive, sir. You will know.
There a Hindi saying, there is a saying that, कि शक का और, वहम का कोई इलाज नहीं हो सकता. इस समय शक और वहम भी बहुत फैल रहा है. I know I have to explain it to
क्यों
our
फैल रहा है? Why is it happening? Because there is no clarity in your own words.
Yeah. So there is a lack of good quality communication with all stakeholders combined. That is the problem. And if that is a problem today, you'll have to do something to correct it. Because when
Hormazd,
BS want to
just coming back to you, do you feel that the government has been, and a government that champions itself in communication, has not been very effective in communicating the drawbacks and benefits? They just emphasize so much on the benefits and the advancement of this date that you completely ignored any possible drawback that may come, including contamination.
Yeah, yeah. See, I think honestly, it's put the government on the back foot. I mean, and I'll be honest, I think if you see the narrative on social media, and Sanket, I beg to differ. I've seen people who have spread blatant lies
like
about the
that's true.
effect of ethanol. There's a car covered, it was a Ferrari, and one of the influencers said Ferrari stuck because of ethanol. Now we know the Ferrari dealers and all, and we checked. They said no, the guy had just parked it there and had gone off for some days. Car was just lying over there. So the complete lies and let's say fabrication that is being posted on, and again that is coming from a fury of politicians benefiting and stuff like that. The whole truth part is completely lost. There's no truth in these narratives right now. So, and then I think the government feels that even one thing negative about it, everyone's going to latch on to that. And today you've seen it. I mean, people talk about, let's say, the ill effects of ethanol, which there are, but they're only cherry picking that. No one is having a balanced view, especially the influencers on, whether it's good, bad, that sort of thing, which really, I think that's where we really try and focus on, because we speak to scientists, we speak to the auto industry, we get inside information. They're scared to speak outside, but at least, with our contacts, we know what they're saying and try and get a balanced picture on it, because all we're interested finally is in the facts. But the influencers are not, because if they go this narrative, it gets them huge popularity,
Hmm.
and that's what they want. And that's the narrative spreading. And the government on the other side is going the other way by making out there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, or is very, very minimal. So unfortunately, the truth is getting lost in this, and I think that's really that's to me really quite actually alarming, because at the end of the day, it's confusing consumers. I have people asking me, friends asking me, hey, should I fill E20 into my car? Just the other day, I have a very good friend. She has a 2016 Desire. And I said, yeah, just keep filling it. I said, are you having any problem with your car? She said, no, car's running absolutely fine. She fills at a regular pump. I said, just keep filling, because if there is degradation, it will come after maybe, a year or 2 years. And even those parts to replace by direct ethanol damage is not very high. Right now, we are seeing indirect ethanol damage, not ethanol itself. It's more the contamination. But there is a fear of even direct ethanol damage by this corrosive nature. But even though some of the rubber parts are in couple of hundreds, and really the expense is not as bad. I mean, the analogy I give is that, I think we should be making more a hue and cry of the state of our roads. I mean, our tires wear out much faster. Our suspension wears out much faster than it should. Compared to the faster wear out of E20 on E10 cars. So I think it's just this perspective. The context needs to be seen. But clearly, as I said, the narrative right now is E20 bashing, because it indirectly reflects, government bashing, authority bashing. And that today gets you huge virality and huge popularity. And that's what a lot of these influencers just thrive on.
Which is why, as journalists, it is our duty to speak to experts and know the reality. So if the government is picking up one end of the extreme, that nothing is wrong, these content creators are picking up the other extreme along
Absolutely.
with the politicians, and are actually doing great disservice to this country by not speaking the truth. And
Exactly.
that is why we have experts
That's
like
absolutely right.
Hormazd and Arun
Yeah.
Malhotra on this program. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. I hope that people will benefit from what you have said, and I hope that the government is listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.